on the role of memory patterns in the psychology of customer loyalty. And the speaker for this is Mr. Vijaybahu Joshi, Head of Experience Design at Geo Platforms Limited. About Mr. Joshi is an experienced design, creativity, automation, and branding professional based out of Mumbai, India. He has expertise in the areas of designing automated design systems, UX strategy, blueprints, behavioral CX audits, design MI systems, interaction and communications, design solutions, product design, exhibition design, brand DNA analysis, cognitive branding, and marketing communication design. He is presently working with Reliance Industries Limited as Head of Experience Design. He holds a master's degree in design from the Industrial Design Center, IIT Bombay, and a bachelor's degree in architecture from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. A huge round of applause to Mr. Vijaybahu Joshi.
Usually, because over the last 2 years, I realized this is a very weird content which I present. Very few people, try and do that. And normally I keep a break in between, but this is just a barely 20 minutes once, so we won't have any break. So post-break, I request people who cannot, I would say, adjust to the content presented, I request them to leave. Right, and then we see some magic thereafter. But today, I think you'll all have to bear with that. So the first tag word of this is a very weird content. It's a very different outlook towards customer loyalty, right? So without wasting time, I'll just go deep in. Now, this query started several years ago when I was in school, and we were figuring out why, you have to have all the people have to have 90%. Particularly, some of us had, trauma of being a dark-skinned, so we were asked, ladki nahi milegi, thoda aur padhai kar lo. So I was just calculating from where this was coming and why, every parent was, after this, and this is how the query started. So now, finally, I think several years later, we are at a spot where we can actually look at how memory patterns are formed. So in a very brief word, this is a weird content. This is about how memory patterns are formed inside your body or inside your brain, whether you know about it or you don't know about it, how they are stored, what havoc they create. And today, for the second time, since the time I've been researching this document, and this is much like my own personal work, I'll be also sharing how we can break that pattern. Normally, this is a content which I present to college students, particularly looking after the two areas that they are heavily indulging in. One, of course, is the substance abuse, if we are talking about drugs. Okay? So let's go deep in now. So part A deals with the memory formation and impressions, and part 2 will talk about how we can also, look at erasing those patterns. It's very, very difficult task. It's not easy, and we'll go deep into that. Now, exactly what are brand impressions? It's the first cognitive recall which you have. So let's only stick to the management parlance for now. So if you think of any word like Tatas or like Maruti's, there's a chemical reaction which happens at a neural level inside your body. And mind doesn't stop. Whatever reaction that you get, you have to accept that reaction, and most of our decisions happen on that basis. Now, this is purely an automatic API program. And the weirdest part of this program, it auto-selects few memory experiences. It doesn't listen to you at a conscious layer. It will actually create its own algorithm, and that gets stored inside the body. Now, as we spoke, I will also go a little deeper. It's very, very difficult to delete these patterns, and that's why we call it as if your NPS is on the lower side, it's very, very difficult to, even bring it to a neutral level, right? Now, just to understand this, and one more, I know it's a post-lunch one, but I expect some participation from you. So, because the time is very short, and it's a very, very, I would say, critical content for your lives, and you'll realize it only after 20 minutes. So if I ask you, what is Bata? What is the first recall that you get? Top of a? 0.99. Okay, it's a shoe, let's say. We have, shopped, handkerchiefs to, cherry blossoms from there, possibly, sometimes, flip-flops from there as well, but that's a first cognitive recall. But within that, what shoe? Is it it's a lady shoe or it's a male shoe? Okay, so again, depending on your experience, again, this is what the data suggests. The moment you have word Bata coming up in your neurology, it will have 85% a black male, shoe. Now let's see in case, so this is one of the direct associations. Let's stretch it slightly further. Look at an indirect association. What in case if Bata decides to come up with these products? Which one will you prefer to buy? How many for DTH service? Possibly no. right? So this is called as a connected one, while in this category, it's a feminine object, which is a lady's purse, and while the fundamental algorithm stored in the memory pattern is for a male shoe, what it did very carefully was selected the leather form of it, rendered it black, and then negotiated it, and within a fraction of a second, you got that answer. Now, please hold that onto that word, which is fraction of a second. Now, this is how most of our decisions are based, whether in terms of whatever we want, our customers to experience in terms of, ATL or BTL or whatever marketing or, contact points. There is something called as 80% of decision being done on that hunch pattern because it is the shortest route to a decision. We inherited this from our jungle ancestors because they had to recognize things in a very hostile condition. If you go in a poetic tone, no, let me organize and, carefully look at this figure by evening, by that time, that tiger had already done its job. And hence, it used to be like a fraction of a second decision, and that is what is our governance policy. If you look at most literatures, 99% of the decisions that we take is done on the basis of 80% hunch and 20% of some kind of a conscious decision we take, right? Now, we'll go deeper into how our brands formed, okay? This is the most common cycle. You have a query, you'll go out to people, you'll go out to either individual one or multiple people, and some kind of a memory pattern is getting to formed. Now, there are two memory patterns. One is your historical memory pattern, and other is a new query which you have shot in the air, maybe to a friend or to a colleague or to, to someone at a call center, right? Now, while you had a rough idea regarding, which range of car you wanted to buy, you're not very clear between, 3 or 4 brands, but still a rough idea has started to form inside your brain. Now, let's look at it, whether it's actually rough or the brain actually decides it to be a concrete idea. Let's see a figure here, and you tell me what is this. Quick. Okay, you are quite attentive, right? It's something in between, right? So notice in each phase, depending on what was your last or past exposure, somebody may consider this to be a map, depending on whether they are from the GIS team, right? Or somebody who has actually been through a recent experience, that is how it works. So effectively, this is a lion. Some of you might have thought it to be a different animal altogether as well, right? In that, I would say exactly this phase. Okay, let's go further. Now, that's what happens in your branding and in terms of your customer loyalty experience. Either whatever you're trying to say, if the brain deciphers it in the same way, either it's a good thing or a bad thing. Why a good thing? If you want to deliver a royal experience and a customer actually senses it to be a royal experience, it's a good thing. So it's like a business class experience. But you planned it to be a royal, but on ground, it was an economy class experience, right? So you tend to question. Of course, the reverse is good. Excuse me. You plan it to be an economy class experience, but the customer deciphered it to be a royal class experience. In that way, you will have a brand equity escalation and you will have an NPS going on the positive side of it. Are you there with me on this till this point, right? This is how, this is of course the digital space we are talking about, the 4 matrix. I think we have an expert here, Benazir. She was my former colleague. And you can plan these touch points depending on the certain persona and that essence calculation. Broadly in the branding world, there are 3 words. You have brand essence, then you have brand identity, then you have brand recall, and between the brand identity and recall, you have something called as a brand gap. That is what this speaks about. You wanted it to be royal, but eventually customer felt it to be a pedestrian experience or an economy class experience. Then it's a brand gap, right? Okay. This is the problem that most of us face when different teams, whether no matter we call it omni-channel and everything, right? But it's very difficult to control these touch points. And this is an area which is still under your control. You can decide, whether you want to do namaste, how will your call center IVRs open up, what kind of a door you'll have, all the tangibles I'm talking about effectively, right? Okay. Now, from the cognitive perspective, this is quite a critical slide, right? This is how our human brain works. The first 4 parts are extremely fast. This is what we have inherited from our jungle ancestors. So it's cognize, recognize, then you have recall, and then you have a react. Now, notice the word react. This react is there because if today, even in this conference, if you're suddenly flying a flying object coming and landing on your desk and it's a cockroach, you will not listen to me, right? So that split-second decision is happening from the way we used to safeguard ourselves from a lunge of a tiger or, a snake or a spider, crawling on you. And quite unfortunately, we still have the same software being carried over to us. And that is why all this reactionary thing happens on the road that you come across. The next part is slightly difficult. That is where you need more energy, which is your intellectual response. So in this, you just need to remember, in the recall, you have 3 components. The first one is repetition. How many times that experience has been repeated, or a brand message has been repeated? What was the recent time when the message was repeated, and the context of it, right? Now, all of you have seen a buffalo and a man taking a buffalo. Imagine this door opening and a man comes inside with a buffalo. Now, suddenly the attention will go. It's not something that you have not seen a buffalo in the past. In the context of this corporate conference, suddenly it becomes an outlier category, and the mind will immediately scan and take it out, right? Most of us actually, when we go through this, most of the NPS damage happens due to these factors when there are repeated message around the brand, appearing. One more classic example of that is, and it's I would say an affiliated marketing or associated rule learning kind of an example. Suppose you were dating somebody who was driving a BMW. I'm using a common gender. You had a very nasty breakup. Then you married again, right? And then this person was also driving a BMW. Male, female, doesn't matter, right? This marriage ended into some kind of a domestic violence, right? The third time you were there at the market, you suddenly saw a BMW trampling over 4-5 people, right? In this situation, BMW did not do anything wrong to you, correct? But will you end up buying a BMW? This is called as an associated, and this is what exactly happened with that example of Bata sweaters and Bata purse, where it's not related to the category, but brain has this beautiful, I would say it's a stupid algorithm. It just associates any random thing as per a shortest possible route, and it will just conclude something, and we have no control on that, okay? Now that's a part which humanity is struggling with, which is the part which we have to take from react to act, and it requires much higher joules of energy. Okay, now till this time, we were talking about the tangible, something which you have control on your hand. Now we'll delve deeper into something called as the intangible, and this is the actual weird part of it. Now, most of us have a learning in a direct cognitive way. So I'm speaking in a language, English, you understand that language. It is like one directly sensory communication, right? What is happening here? Is this person saying anything, or both this person? You get any message from there? Okay, what is that message? Quickly. Anger and friendly. So this is a space which is called as non-verbals. I did not say anything. I did not act anything. It's not a video, but still my brain deciphered a message. Let's go deeper. Now, here was a situation where I and him, or I or her, were directly in face-to-face or interface with each other. Let's take a very, very interesting example. This is a real-life story of a diamond merchant. This fellow, very rich fellow from Surat, and it's a real-life case which happened in the Brahma Kumaris Mount Abu camp. This guy was there meditating. Every day during meditation, he was having a dream where he was roaming around in the street with a trunk of old clothes, and he was asking for a small shanty. Jhopdi chahiye tha usko, and he did not have 15,000 rupees with him. He got scared. He said, this is what I came here for, because most people think when you do meditation, you go into these camps, you become a recluse, correct? So he was thinking, is this what my future looks like? And even the teacher of that camp was slightly, perturbed, how these dreams are coming, day after day. Third or fourth day, she happened to meet the cook of that particular group. She was visibly disturbed. She asked, what happened, Tai? And she said, my landlord has asked me to vacate my shanty. All I need is 15,000 rupees, and I'm not getting that amount. So continuously for 3-4 days, with that tension in her heart and mind, she was cooking food. And this guy, who actually ate that food, his brain, in some circumstances, deciphered that message. You got the story? The person directly never communicated, but it went via food. Now let's go deeper into the scientific relevance of that. So something similar happened in Japan, where 2 villages were at war with each other for a share of water. I guess it's very common now, right? Now what happened, one village was into meditation, other was not into meditation. What they did was they started charging the water, which is the common pool of water, with the sources of love and compassion. And beautifully, the water recorded these. So water has this beautiful innate capacity to record human emotions. In certain cases, the water retains that emotion for 8 days. And if you check the belt of Gangotri, it lasts up to 8 months. It's still a mystery how it happens, but these are all actual photographs taken from the microscope. So water has this beautiful capacity to record emotions, and it reacts to every kind of emotion. Okay, there with me till now? Okay, let's go deeper. Now comes a time where we'll ask, does emotion have color, or is there a more scientific relevance? So we saw something which is called a crystalline structural reference to that. Now look at our own heritage, which is the 4th century Natya Shastra. We call this the rasa theory. It beautifully divides the set of 9 emotions into 2 broader buckets. On the left hand side, you have the set of heavy emotions, and on the right hand side, you have the set of lighter emotions, right? Which are in the modern science, it's slightly difficult to achieve. I hope you agree or disagree that we are mostly on the left hand side these days, right? Rather being on the right hand side, right? Now somebody then questioned, is there a way? So possibly people in those era, 4th century, was able to see that color or radiation coming out from the human body. A part reference of that has been covered in a beautiful fictional book called A Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, where monks had that capacity to look at the body radiations, which are coming out, whether it's erotic in nature, it's angry in nature, or is it sad in nature, and this is how they used to treat the entire class together. A parallel experience was then documented around 1784 by the virtue of Kirlian photography. They started looking at the aura energy of objects and circumstances. You'll find very similar evidences, barring the green color here, in which we say, why are you turning red? It's actually the aura which is turning red, but this photography, if you see on the left-hand side, you have a glass which is held by a person who was very, very angry versus the same person, when it's slightly Shanta Subhav, whatever you call it, right, is holding the glass. This is before meditation and after meditation. You see this entire gamut of colors changing. This is the slide which I would request you to remember. You see those land patches with the red soil. That's called as a hot soil. Another is the cool soil or the cold soil, calm soil. Now, invariably, if you are upset, you realize we try and head to Matheran, we try and head to Lonavala. This is the reason. There are areas where you enter into and your psychology just is very upset about it. You don't know the reason. This is one of the reasons, actually. So our mind knows what is best for us, and we invariably get drawn to these areas. And your CX cycle, I'll talk a little later in the end, how we can actually look at this. This organization is absolutely approachable, Reiki Healing Foundation. They invented their own DAS called as Digital Aura Scanner. They can be approached. You can actually get your zones photographed and then figure out your CX strategy, which is a red area, which is a green area, what kind of an effort you have to put over there to pacify your CX score, okay? Now the question comes, do we really need to think about this unseen emotion? Partly answer is yes, we are 68% water ourselves, right? And this is the most scariest of part. No matter what you do, we are carrying and picking up these emotions, and we have more evidences coming up along the line, okay? And this is just a side slide. You'll have this culture of a prayer room next to a kitchen, or the concept of prayer before food, or not accepting water with every hand, or coming back and taking a bath after a funeral. Most of this is connected around water, and it comes from that legacy, right? I see a lot of serious faces. I'll try and wrap up fast. Okay. Now this is where again another part of the science begins. So if you have something called as a hot coffee and a cold coffee kept to each other, what will happen to each other after 1 hour of time? They lose their temperature essence, right? So one from a higher temperature will go slightly lower, one from a lower possibly come to higher. Did we deploy any AI in this, or any electricity or any external force? That means there is something very magically happens in cosmic electromagnetic energy which we have no control on. Agree or disagree? If you have 4 different temperatures of water, they will all reach some certain equilibrium, correct? So there is something called as an energy balancing, and that's what happens in air conditioning, right? The hot air goes up, the cool air comes down. We don't force it to do that, correct? Now let's see what happens when human to human comes in front of each other. I guess I have just 2 minutes left. Is it so? Oh, no, I'm particular about time. Do I actually have 2 minutes left? Okay. Oh, God. Because the solution part will be left out otherwise. Okay. So I'll come to the point directly. So suppose 2 people are meeting and they have this bunch of emotions and memories and episodes of trauma, good, grief, XYZ, all stored together. Even without them knowing about it, there is an exchange of energy happens. This is the same cup versus this logic. One has to not go too far. It's simple physics. Okay. The second is when we look at each other, there is a Bluetooth contact. We call this eye to eye. It's a line of sight contact. That is also when emotions transfer. That is why you feel sometimes very heavy when you talk to somebody at the end of the conversation, or lighter at the end of somebody, right? Then it's called as a brief touching moment. It's called as a tap and pay or NFC contact, right? And this slide, I'm sorry, is for college students actually, I didn't change it. And this is called as deep physical contact. It's called as fiber connectivity, where very heavy set of emotions transfer for first 2 or 3 months. And hence you'll often find parents commenting कि मेरे बेटे में बहुत बदलाव आ गया है या मेरी बेटी में बहुत बदलाव आ गया है. It's nothing but their energies are balancing. And someone is aggressive, उसका aggression दूसरे में जा रहा है, उसका शांत स्वभाव दूसरे में जा रहा है. Okay, clear? Very, very simple. Now, this is where the problem happens, and this is, of course, when we have a multi-partner contact, right? It's okay, I mean, not questioning on the moral quotient right now here, but what happens in this situation is body doesn't get time to resolve the previous set of downloaded data. So it enters into a state of frenzy, right? And you have, what you have is called as confused software. It's like a bit of iOS, bit of Android, and bit of all React, and your app started crashing. Right? So it's better to go into deep meditation if you really, and not you I'm saying, but if someone really likes to go that path, right? And settle it for a while, right? This also happens on occasion when where we are in a job where a deep level physical contacts are there, like doctors, engineers, whatever you call it, right? You're in some kind of a setup where this is absolutely mandatory. There are tools and techniques which you can contact me, I'll inform you how you can actually dissolve that, right? This is another part in which, and this is again simple physics, when you think good about something, the good emotions or the good data from that person transfers to you. If you think bad about somebody, it's a bad data which transfers. Very, very simple. You touch a hot cup of coffee, a bit of hotness reaches you. This is what science, it took me almost 45 years to understand this very simple logic. I'm not permitted to think anything bad because I don't want that garbage data, right? If you understand, it's again from that simple parlance. Now, may I take 2 minutes last? Sure? Okay. Who's the next speaker, by the way? Oh, God. Okay. There's a women out there. Okay. My apologies, ma'am. Okay. So as of 2024, what is the trend that we are observing with respect to marriages, relationships, friendships, crime rates against children and women, or maybe trust factor? What is the rate? Is it going up? Is it stable? Or it's going down? Yeah, it's going up. So quickly see that factor, because Indian divorce rate has gone up. Russia moved from 24% to 73% this year in terms of the divorce rates, right? They are actually looking for Indian grooms, so, opportunity. Okay. Now, let's see this from a very different theory, and this will calm you down. This is called as the yoga theory, and since we are, 80% West, let's call this the age theory, the golden, silver, bronze, and iron. Correct? You have known this theory? The way we have understood this theory is like this. So it's a cycle which moves, and there is some relation called as divinity which was not taught to us. The problem with this equation is wrong. It's actually related to your proximity to divinity. So in golden age, you are closest to that pure blissful energy. Let's not call it religion. It's the motherly love, which is love and compassion. And in iron age, we moved very far. So in golden age, you had the vices which were, your virtues which were the very, very common default factor of love and compassion. Hence, you had no defect. It's like aapse galti hoti nahi thi. But the moment you move to iron age, because it's the light which has moved away, so the moment you remove light, you have darkness. You cannot create darkness. So in a similar way, the moment you remove divinity, all you have is the vices. Okay, it's a very, very simple physics logic ki andhera bana nahi sakte. Correct? So now we have iron age which have many, many defects. So if you suddenly see your CX cycle from this angle and you realize, okay, partly, for people who agree or disagree with this, is yes, we seems to be in iron age and we need a different strategy altogether. So this is a slide for you. In short, our customer is stressed and disturbed whether you agree and don't agree, and we are that customer. If we start from that basic realization, right, the game changes. Now, there are two ways you absorb this. One is the prejudice and skepticism, right? Normally, it's the 15% of people who are normally on the right-hand side zone, which is prejudice bhi do qisam ke hote hain, where you know this exists, and other people, which is where you don't agree with at all. In between, we have called a space called skepticism. So if you have queries, of course, in the post session, I am more than willing to take up. And please do walk on this path. There's a bit of physics and spirituality all combined together. Now I will talk about what we can do about the situation. One is the artificial divinity. You prep up your systems to realize what are the areas where you need, bots and all the artificial system to throw out a little more love and compassion. Very, very simple. So you have these circumstances, let's say, where critical payment has failed, or maybe there's a claim rejection. What the bots or your situation, which are the autopilot ones, can possibly do in the phase one. So you just level up the warmth. I know it's artificial, but you can do that. The second is a strategy which I'm sharing for the second time in my life, which is the impressions deletion. This is particularly for caregivers, contact center employees who absorb a lot of muck day in and day out, right? Particularly people who face the music, we call this, right? Now, in the parlance of humans, it's very difficult to delete data, but in the case of computers, you can still do that. You can just delete that particular application and reinstall that, right? So there are 5 core methods through which in the Indian subcontinent, people used to follow that. These methods are listed out here. I've been blessed in this life to follow the top 2 methods, which is the Sudarshan Kriya and Vipassana, and I quickly speak about. All these pretty much does the same thing. It goes inside your body, and it deletes the hard atoms first, and I'll just elaborate, and this is my last slide, right? Okay, so I'll first speak about the SKY method, Sudarshan Kriya. This is an automatic deletion method. It's a water-based method. If the garbage is very, very high, if you had a traumatic past, maybe some kind of a marriage issue or anything, or child deaths or parents death, it can be anything. Or maybe, workspace abuse, anything is there. It still rests inside your body. What Sudarshan Kriya does, it goes inside, and depending on the nature of that emotion, because there are 5 different kind of emotions, it will decide to eject it out of your body via water as a medium. So in Sudarshan Kriya, in 45 minutes, your body is thrown to a panic mode. Panic mode, I'll say that again. So these atoms which doesn't come out normally during regular meditation, they suddenly try and move out of the body, fearing that this body is about to die. In that moment, your good atoms, pack them up with water, and you, for first few days, it could be 1 or 2 days, you may have loose motions. Again, you may have vomiting, you may have excessive perspiration. If the nature of memory is extremely horrible, you may have fever. Okay, so this is the way the body resolves, and then gradually your things start settling over a period of 1 month time. Clear on that aspect? It's a water-based automatic deletion process where you don't struggle with that. In Vipassana, you fuse your conscious and subconscious layer, and your body starts then feeling all the pain and agony, and then you take your consciousness over there and you burst it out. Right? And then new consciousness appears of pain or some kind of a cold sensation, some term of acidity, right? But this is your choice, which patch you want to delete first. So Sudarshan Kriya is more like a laddu method. Everything happens on its own in 45 minutes. Some days you'll just feel sleepy, go on sleeping because some past vikara is getting settled. Thank you. I don't think we have time for questions. Most of you will have, it seems. I am around.
Or should we call Dr. Joshi?
All of this is borrowed knowledge, by the way.
So, for the felicitation, I would like to invite on the stage Mr. Debraj Singh Gupta, CMO of Victorinox.